So in this video, I want to talk about adding sound to a movie. Adding sound to a movie being separated into adding sound meaning effects or adding sound meaning music. Well, in the professional world, this is a separated process. There are companies that make sound for the movies, and there are composers that make the music for the movies. And if you use a DAW, there are different things that the DAW has to provide in order for you to have a pleasant workflow. So in short, Pro Tools is pretty good in working with sound design and effects for a movie, and Logic is pretty good in composing. But of course you can do both with both DAWs, and you can do it with all other DAWs too. So it's a matter of a personal preference. But me personally, I've been working a lot in Logic because Logic provides a kind of mixture where you can do both. A first thing which is really important to notice is that when you work in Logic, you usually do things or record things that are aligned to MIDI tempo and bar positions. So whatever you put into Logic is somehow synced to a bar. While as when you start in Pro Tools, the first track you're gonna create usually is based on samples, which means based on time. And that makes a difference because when you change the tempo, things that are aligned on bars change their timing, except if you fix the timing and align regions or events to time, which is something that you can do in Logic based on an SMPTE position, which is what I've done here with this crash. That means if I change the tempo, then this region is going to move. But it's only moving the bar position. It's not moving the time position. As you can see here, when you hold it, it's around 10 seconds. And if I move the tempo, it's still around 10 seconds, but on a different bar position. So this is a very basic and most important thing to know when you work with sound on movie. And usually when you make sounds, you align your sounds to timing positions, meaning that if a house is exploding, for example, in the movie, then you need this explosion exactly at the right time. You can't afford that this is moving somehow, then you end up in total chaos. So that's why usually musical composing and sound designing are done in different DAWs or in a different process. But if you're like me and you have some jobs sometimes when you want to do both at the same time, meaning you are responsible for the whole sound of the whole movie, you add the sounds and you also add the music, then you usually compose from the beginning to the end, meaning you are looking for certain parts in the video that are really important for you to hit, for example, a bar position 1. And then you change the tempo in order to end up at a certain time at bar 1. So in this project, I imported a little movie as an example. And in this movie, my father filmed me skiing in 1982, believe it or not. We went on the mountain hill with a really big backpack with a video recorder and a huge camera. So in order for us to learn skiing better. And I wanted to make a joke and kind of pretended to ski against him. And in fact, I did make him crashed down because I didn't see that he was standing on his skis, and so I hit him accidentally. So this is the crash of the main event in the movie. So I'm trying to compose my music in a way that bar one is happening exactly at the time where he's crashing. So I imported this movie now without any sound, because he's screaming some really bad words when he's crashing down. So there's just some atmosphere underneath this, which is not from the original movie. So when you import a movie, it's done relatively easy in Logic. You can say open movie, and when it's opened, you have certain project settings, synchronization settings. For example, what's the frame rate? Well, it's in my experience not a problem if the frame rate is not set totally correct, because Logic automatically adjusts the time in a correct way, while as if you have some analog transfer, having a false frame rate may lead to a wrong speed of playback. So what's also important to know is that usually in a movie, bar one plays at 1 hour, because sometimes you have some countdown for a movie and you don't want your start from a movie being on a negative value. So you start at 1 hour, so you can have everything in advance before 1 hour. So this is quite common. You can change it and it's no big deal. When you import a movie, you usually get asked if you want to import your audio, and usually if you import your audio, it's put on a track and it's automatically SMPTE locked. First of all, what is SMPTE? That means Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. They came up with this format. So when you have hours, minutes, and seconds, then the next is not a hundredths part of a second, but it's frames. So it counts until 25 now, and you have 80 subframes, so it counts till 80. This usually helps, for example, if you go forward and backward in the movie, to find the exact position where the crash happens. So let's say it's 10 seconds and 7 frames, for example. So it's helpful in Logic to have certain windows like a transport float, and you transform the transport float, to a giant time display. And it's also helpful to have an event list, and the event list is showing time. So in Logic, you can search Apple loops for sound effects, and for example, in the sound effects, search for a stinger, not a stringer, a stinger. And then, for example, use that, drag it into Logic. And while you do that, you can already see what exactly is the position. So when you put that on this position and then lock the SMPTE position, it's really everything safe. But now let's compose the music. I did already prepare something. So the music is playing 7 bars. It's just a beat, and at the end of bar 7, there's a crash. So right now, the crash is not where I hit my father. So if I want bar 7 exactly at the position where I hit my father, of course I can try to do it with try and error, because I have a tempo track, And if I change the tempo track, for example, to a faster tempo, then I can see the timing position moving towards my bar 1. So basically that's a very simple way to do it, which works in all DAWs. But Logic also provides a special tool for this. So you can add a tempo operations window, which means you can tell Logic at which position to start. So let's say, for example, I've done something like this before bar 4. There is already something exactly on bar 3, which I want to keep. Then I only make tempo changes starting from bar 4. And then I want to reach bar 7 exactly on my timing position 10:07. So in order to achieve this, I can now manually move my tempo until I reach the desired timing position. Then I can choose if I want to create a tempo curve, which slowly rises the tempo, or if I want to create a constant tempo. This is what I choose here. Of course, if I create a tempo curve, I'm slowly changing the tempo and I need a higher rise compared to if I try to use a constant tempo. What is also a thing is the density of tempo changes. You can see here now that I only have 2 tempo changes in exact bars. So the tempo change is not happening in a fluent way. So I can choose a different density, and I can also choose to continue with a new tempo. So if I apply this, you can see I'm having a tempo change and my music is now rather synced with my sound or with my sound effects. That's the way I can compose my music to the movie. And if I'm in the position where I have to compose like 8 or 9 musics for the same movie, then I would recommend to open up separate projects for every music you compose, and then afterwards bounce the music that you composed and put it into a master project where you align it with the movie. This way, whenever you want to make some little changes, you're not ending up with the chaos in all the rest. And of course, what I'm assuming here now is that the movie will not be changed. So usually you get the movie and the movie has some timing which has been decided, and you're in the position to add the sound afterwards. So of course things get very complicated if the movie afterwards has some timing changes, but also these problems become much smaller if you work with audio files that are assigned to a certain time position and that can easily be moved. So when you're done with everything, of course, it's easy to export the movie, which is done in Logic by export audio to movie. And then you're going to be asked if any audio that's still or already within the movie shall be kept or not. So if you imported audio before and you're now bouncing it in again, then you should deactivate this option, of course. And what's also a thing which may be interesting is that if you imported a movie, you can try to create a marker set from scene cuts. I don't use this very often because I have this one position where I know this is important for me. But it may be interesting for a longer movie. So Logic creates some markers that try to find out where important changes in the movie happen. Nothing useful comes out of here now, but what's interesting about this, and what's interesting to know, is that markers usually also have a bar position, while as scene markers don't have a bar position, but they are assigned to a certain time position, which means they are much better usable than the other markers for working with a movie. Whenever you change your MIDI tempo, you can still see those markers and maybe easily align something to a certain marker position. Apart from that, you can always go to the global tracks and show a marker track and use a new marker set and work with different marker sets. That's an interesting thing in Logic. You can do the same with tempo sets and try out different versions of a tempo change. So you can define new tempo sets and name them. What you cannot do in Logic, unfortunately, is shorten the movie or import two movies and play them one after each other. That's something you can do in Ableton Live and also in Pro Tools with the Complete Production Toolkit. So I hope this is some streamlined information for you if you want to work with audio on a movie. Thanks.